Good evening and welcome to another edition of Life is People. With special guest tonight, Nick Lambert from MaidSafe. Hello, Nick.
Hello.
Good evening, and joined by my co-host Ryan. How you doing tonight, Ryan?
Doing good, Tim. Doing good.
You look cold, my friend.
It's snowing here, so
Oh dear. And we're
yeah.
joined by Rich. How you doing, Rich?
I'm doing great. Snowing here too.
Yeah, another place where it's cold, where it is winter all over the world. So, like I said, we're joined tonight by, and I'm really excited by this because it's been something that I've been building up for ages to get someone from MaidSafe on. But as you can imagine, in the sort of stage of their development where they are at the moment, they're completely snowed under and working hard to get this thing out live. So I'm going to sort of like introduce Nick in a minute and ask him to basically tell us where it all started. From how did he get from you know to where he is in his life to where he is now. What were the steps along the way, and what basically what made someone like you, Nick, come to the thought process of decentralizing the internet, which is a very revolutionary concept of what you're about to do. This is an evolutionary step that is fundamentally going to change how we communicate and how the internet and everything is going to change fundamentally. And I just want to know, where did you sort of like, what made you come to this point? Where did it all start with you?
I'd love to say it was some kind of carefully considered plan, but it's just kind of blind luck, I suppose, at the end, which is maybe not the answer people want to hear. But I mean, the idea behind decentralizing the internet is quite a technical proposition and something that David has really, he's been the heart and soul of that whole idea and driving the implementation of it. And my involvement was really kind of almost by chance, just really meeting David through something else. And I worked for a marketing agency at the time, and we started doing some work for MaidSafe. And then lo and behold, about 3 years later, I was an employee, and they haven't let me leave yet. So the kind of road for me has been, I'd say part by chance, to be honest. And they had a need to just get their marketing strategy, and I think the business strategy, just taking some of that load off David and allowing someone to go and do that while David could focus totally on the technical stuff. So that was kind of where I came into it. I didn't have any kind of grand thoughts of decentralizing the internet. I can't lay claim to those. They're all David's, unfortunately. So, and if I didn't think he was listening, I might actually steal it and say it was mine. But he would give me a hard time in work tomorrow, so I better be honest.
So what I'm just curious, what drew you to this field in the first place? Have you been friends with David for some time, or did he seek you out? Did you seek him out?
Yeah, well, it was it was kind of it was a strange thing. I used to work for a digital marketing agency, which is you do websites and brands and email marketing campaigns and stuff like that. And one day I got this what I thought was quite a cheeky phone call from this guy saying, "Look, I'm working in this company just down the road, and we've got this idea, and I want you to do some marketing work for us for free," which typically was not an approach that we normally got. So I thought, well, the guy was interesting enough that, and he showed me the old perpetual data video, which is one that was put together back in 2007, so not long after MaidSafe was incorporated. And I watched that and was kind of really intrigued, and then went out to see David, and been working together ever since. So yeah, it must be about 5.5 years now, maybe a bit longer.
Awesome.
So for all the people that the viewers and the people out there in the greater world, I mean, let's start at the very beginning. What MaidSafe isn't just a name; it's an acronym. So just start with the acronym. What MaidSafe actually stands for.
Yes, so it's a massive array of internet disks, secure access for everyone. So, as again, David was the kind of came up with that one. It's a kind of play on RAID as well. So the name at first, we've had some criticism about the name, and the first time I heard it, I wasn't a particularly big fan of it either. And funnily enough, we had a woman in about 2 weeks ago who just wandered in off the street and said, "I've got some some silver. Can you clean it for me?" And I was thinking, I'm not sure if this lady's had her medication yet. And so she repeated it again. And it's only as she left I started to realise MaidSafe. She thought we were like polishing silver. So it's a name we get criticised for at times, but I think when you understand the acronym, I think it makes sense and it's a really good name. So.
Well,
I
I
like it.
mean, yeah, I mean, if it's the acronym is very good. I mean, the so sort of like someone like myself who's kind of not overly computer literate. I mean, what does it I mean, it says internet disks. I mean, what is an internet disk? Let's start from that point. I mean, what is a massive array of them? What is an internet disk? Just the very basic point of view.
Yeah, so it's really, I mean, the premise for MaidSafe is it's removing all the data centers that we've become so accustomed to having and all the servers that we have on today's existing infrastructure, and it's making these central points, as we all know, are points of weakness in terms of the ability to surveil them and the ability to hack information from them. So David realized back in the early part of this millennium that in actual fact he spent a lot of his time trying to fix problems with servers, just kind of small office servers, and quite radically came up with the idea that actually the servers were the problem. They weren't actually, so don't try and make the server better or fix it, remove it. So we now have a network where this massive array of internet disks, because it's comprised of the spare computing resources of all the users on the network. So they will go to a site somewhere and they will download the safe software, and that will enable them to log themselves onto and create their own credentials on this new network that, as I said, is comprised of the spare computing resources of all its users, and moving us away from this kind of centralized architecture that we seem to have today that seems to me at times to cause more problems than it actually fixes. So that's the massive array of internet disks. It's disks that are made up by all the users in the network.
Well, I mean, we've spoken about it a number of times on the podcast about that. Basically, the centralization of everything that we see around us is basically against the natural world that we see around us. And I know it's something that particularly you and David like to talk about, and how a lot of nature is around us has inspired your concepts, and it's that very point for people that don't understand about how centralization is a problem. I mean, if I was to say to you, well, why would I want a decentralized internet over a centralized internet? What would you say to me? Why not just stay with the system as we got?
Yeah, because I think they're broken, Tim. I think, and I think a lot of people recognise that. That's not just MaidSafe that have that opinion. There's a lot of kind of famous authors that are saying similar things. But I think it's fundamentally broken, and I think we've gone on for long enough trying to put sticking plasters and band-aids over the problem, looking to companies to come up with better privacy policies, and looking for governments who surveil us and have a vested interest in surveilling us to actually pass legislation that stops them doing that is not going to work very well. So the current system is broken, and decentralization is good because and if it's done in the right way, it's also much more efficient. Our humans tend to think we think we're very clever, and a lot of us, some of us are. But I think that we look at ants, and they have 130 million years, arguably, of time on this earth, and they know a bit more about organising complex systems than we do in the short time that we've been here. So I think humans need to stop maybe ignoring nature quite so much and look to it for inspiration. And I think that was a big part of MaidSafe, obviously.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's very sort of obvious almost in some of the language you use, because compared to Bitcoin, which is about mining and rigging, I mean, MaidSafe is all about farming. So I mean, what's the connection between farming and MaidSafe? I mean, because you wouldn't sort of naturally compute the word farming with something that's very technological.
Yeah.
So I mean, so can you sort of open and explain to us what farming is and what that concept is all about, please?
Yeah, of course. So farming is where end users provide their resource to the network, and in doing so, they're rewarded for providing this resource. So the network continually checks that they are providing the resource they said they would, and on doing that, they are awarded safe coins at random by the network. And we came up with the concept of farming. It actually came about through our community forum, and it was just a term that I saw at one time, and I thought that's really, really good. And the reason I like it is because mining is quite a wasteful thing. And the thought is that it's now about $50 plus to actually mine a block. So I think mining is very it's so proof of work is solving kind of meaningless computation. And yes, it gives the network more resilience and strength, but it's ultimately solving problems that don't need to be solved. So we like farming because you're not solving anything that doesn't need to be there, but you need to provide the resource to the network, and the network continually checks that. So that's why we like the phrase farming, because it's not a wasteful process. It's a process where you're providing something and getting value in return.
So, I mean, it's my understanding of it is, and this is what we've done a very sort of just from a very basic point of view. So, I will basically give some of my percentage of my computing space and my machine away, and then that is the point of farming, isn't it? Am I on the right lines?
Yeah, so you will decide how much storage space, for example, that you have on your computer. You may actually go and a lot of people are now talking about buying these small single board computers, which are very energy efficient, and just putting some flash memory into those and running those as full-time nodes on the network. And so really yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the concept. You're just providing spare computing resource. And I mean, it's a good way to think about it if you're very unfamiliar with decentralization is like SETI at Home or one of these projects where it tried to combine computing resources on the planet. But the problem I always found with some of those projects, not all of them, was that the demands on your machine were pretty severe, to the point where if you're running one of those nodes and you didn't crank down your CPU, your computer would almost grind to a halt. So I think on the safe network again, we've gone for being very focused on efficient code, and it's all C++. Because of that, you can run in excess of 60 nodes on just a standard commodity PC. So just running one node, I don't anticipate anyone noticing it at all. So yeah, it should be exciting. We're really looking forward to getting it launched and moving forward.
So, in theory, would I be would a user would they just be able to use their mobile phone? I mean, was this something they could connect? Because that's obviously got a lot of computing. I mean, we're moving to an age where fridges are having computing. Can we envisage where every electrical thing that we can use around us can be used for farming?
I know that David's working on it for phones. I mean, it's phones are obviously and tablets are not as good for farming and providing resource to the network as desktops and laptops and other devices are. And because a lot of the time when it goes into sleep, it just cuts a lot of its connections off. So, but David is working on a process whereby mobiles and tablets can provide resource and get paid in return. The exact details of that, Tim, are not hugely clear to me at the moment, and it's definitely going to be I would imagine, post-beta launch thing. I'm not sure that we'll go in to beta with that capability. But you'll obviously still be able to use a network and farm on a desktop or a laptop.
Now,
So
one
yeah,
of the things. Go on.
I
Sorry.
was just going to quickly say, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, mobiles are obviously enormous, and Internet of Things, which is fridges and all the rest of it, are big as well. So yeah, you kind of wonder where it's sensible to stop. Where do we stop putting computer chips and things? So yeah, and hopefully MaidSafe will be at the center of all of that in a decentralized way. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting, and I think with all these additional devices needing to be connected up, hopefully MaidSafe is well positioned to take advantage.
Well, that was one of the things that when I first came across MaidSafe was mind blow for me, because I've been, I kind of, when I first got into the internet, you know, back in the early 90s and stuff, I loved the concept then we could all just connect as it was originally, just from machine to machine, because I'm not overly computer literate in the sense, but I've always been fascinated by the point that we could get to in the human evolution, where if you could just connect all these machines, we'd have a super brain. We'd be able to switch on something and an amount of computing power that, okay, initially we may see the first benefits of it all, like saying, oh, we can all communicate. It's a bit like, as we've mentioned before in the podcast, being 100 years ago and saying, oh, okay, I can see that the stagecoach, if we put an engine on that, we can make a car, but they would have never foreseen a Tesla machine, or whatever. So we're at that point now, and so we can all definitely see, okay, it's going to be a greater connection between us all. But none of us, I suppose, in any idea will have any idea of what MaidSafe is basically about to switch on. You're about to switch on the largest ever computing power that has ever happened. I mean, that is what initially blew my head away, and I mean, that's why I sort of mentioned about in maybe in the future, or as we are, it's going to dilute right down to, like you said, the Internet of Things and stuff like that. I mean, what do you sort of foresee that could be the sort of applications when you turn on this massive amount of computing power? I mean, what kind of things would you sort of, paint me a picture maybe of 3 years down the line, what you think the world will be like once you switch this on?
Yeah, 3 years is good. I mean, I think at the start it's going to be a lot of decentralized Dropbox style applications and exchanges and messaging and voice over IP apps. It's interesting you say in 3 years' time. I mean, I think healthcare is something, and I think one of the things, I mean, you're in Scotland as well, Tim, so you'll know, but one of the key things that the NHS in Scotland are trying to do is trying to put patients back in control of their own data once again, and I think we'll see that trend hopefully continue into healthcare, because healthcare companies seem to always get caught liable for losing people's data. I think interestingly, actually, the Queen's medical records were found on the beach in Troon. I don't know if you're aware of that. So we're pretty good at losing these things, and I think they will no longer want to have that hanging over them. I think it would be nice to pass that to the patient, so the patient is then able to control who sees their records, and making sure that only the appropriate members of staff within the hospital see their records. So I think we'll like to see applications like that that will come as maybe a second wave of apps that give the users control of their own data again, because I don't really think that's hugely possible right now with the technology that we have. I know another thing that David talks quite a lot about is autonomous intelligence. So there's some projects kicking about Europe just now. One is called Robo-Earth, which is, I think they're just kind of using the web as a way to distribute learning amongst kind of robots and robotic devices. And I think the hope is that, again, the safe network would be something that would really lend itself well to distributing knowledge amongst what essentially are just other devices connect to the network. So I think applications like that would be quite exciting. So, distributed autonomous intelligence, which is quite a mouthful, but that would be quite exciting. And the other thing I've heard a bit is having a news service that's free from propaganda, where users actually vote, maybe in a Reddit style, on news. So instead of you watch CNN, you kind of get like American propaganda, you watch BBC, you get British propaganda, and it's very hard to actually get unbiased news these days. But I think hopefully the Safe Network will allow that to come forward as well, and we can start to get rid of the propaganda and things like that. So maybe some of those applications, Tim, in the next few years.
Well, that alone, what you just mentioned then, I mean, that would be such a huge step forward of us as a human race. I mean, the ability, I've heard David talk about it before, and we've spoken about it before, about the Palestinian and the Israeli, instead of seeing each other as enemies, we just be able to speak to each other and saying, man, that's a human being that died. I mean, there's, as you know, Nick over here, and I don't want to be parochial, but there's been an advert over this week about what happened in Arms, the day when they'll play football. And it is that point that human beings, that when they do, they can communicate with each other, and it's something that we've spoken a lot about. And I think that's something that, that I think will fundamentally change a lot of things. I mean, I know it's a very powerful thing that, like David and you we've spoken about, the ability for human beings to look at the other human being and not having it put through, like you said, the spectrum of a lens of a certain media organisation, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I agree. I think data is, I'd say, arguably, one of the, if not the most valuable commodity on the planet. And information is power, as the saying goes. So I think that's not going to change anytime soon. I think if we can get a network that allows that power to reside with the users where it should be, I think it's going to be really quite exciting and potentially quite pivotal um, in the human race moving forward, maybe.
I mean, would there be a one of the things that I've sort of contemplated myself? Would it be possible with the intelligence that we're about to switch on? Would it be possible to have almost an instant Dropbox of communication, so I could speak instantly to someone in China and maybe understand each other fully through this? Because one of the things that I love, I mean, I want you to sort of open up and discuss more about is the idea of security that the MaidSafe network offers as compared to what is currently available. So if we could just have a freer form of communication, but I don't know, maybe let's go back and take a step back. I mean, explain to the viewers and everyone who's watching, why is the MaidSafe network so secure? What is inherently the element of MaidSafe that makes it different from the internet that we experience at the moment? And where does that come from? Where is the intrinsic strength from?
I think there's a few things that make it more secure. So it's not just maybe one thing. I think removing the central points of weakness that I spoke about at the start, removing servers and data centers, which are the places that data is always stolen from and surveilled from. I think the removal of that is very powerful. And I think actually, even within, if you look at companies and the way how they protect their data, they use a kind of fortress approach. So they put data, valuable data, in a place, and then they put firewalls and intrusion detection and all these things all around it. And so people know where the valuable information is. They just have to get it. And I think one of the things that the Safe Network does, which is interesting, is because the data is distributed and not just individual files, individual chunks of individual files are distributed. There is no central point to attack. Is a powerful thing, and because people switch their computers off and on, the vaults on the network are constantly changing, almost kind of like blinking lights on a faraway shore. And so because of that, the location of the data is constantly changing. So I think a number of these factors make it much more secure. And I think as well that the data is only ever encrypted and decrypted on the client's machine. So nothing ever goes onto the network unless it's encrypted. It's the only way data can exist. So I think that's another feature that just makes it so secure as well, and very different from some of the other systems. What were some of the other points you asked, Tim? You asked a couple of things there.
I've heard you sort of describe it. I mean, it's sort of like going back to what I was trying to say. I mean, I think it was either David or yourself quoted it as saying that it was like putting a grain of sand and spreading that handful of sand all over the beaches all around the world. I mean, I love that. That was almost poetic. I mean, kind of.
I don't know where David gets those from. I don't know if I don't know where he seems to pull all these really eloquent sayings from. He puts the rest of us to shame, unfortunately. I'll need to find out his source for all those amazing analogies that he comes up with.
It's dude, his dog. That's all that is.
That's it, yeah. That's the smart one. That's the one designing the network. David's just a front for the dog.
So I mean, what I was trying to sort of get to is I mean, as we kind of most people are aware, and we're all of us aware, without putting your head in the sand, how much the centralized system we live in at the moment is open to these weaknesses. I mean, you have to. the NSA, what's gone with Edward Snowden, and so I mean, how does the MaidSafe network overcome that? I mean, what for instance, let's take it actually a step further. I mean, what's to stop the British MI5 or the NSA coming over and just basically owning MaidSafe, the network? I mean,
Yeah, well, it's not owned by anyone. It's an open source project now, so it's not owned by anyone, and we've done a number of things to protect the network and remove MaidSafe, the company, which is distinct from the network, as a central point of weakness, because companies can often be targeted. So what we've been able to do is by open sourcing all the code and encouraging people to fork it, everything is out there. And what we're also doing, Tim, is we are setting up development pods, which you've probably heard about. And we have two pretty active ones, one in San Francisco and one in Montreal. And we've got a couple of others just looking like they're going to start. And the purpose of these is that these pods we will pass the knowledge of the network to these pods, and these pods will be a collection of individuals who will add features to the network. They will fix bugs, etc. And they will earn SafeCoin for doing that. So we will ultimately compete with them to maintain this underlying code base. So what we're doing there is if MaidSafe, whatever happened to MaidSafe, the knowledge of the network is spread, and hopefully this will get passed around the world so that we have a lot of, I don't know, it'd be nice to have as many as 8 pods or something like that with really strong core competency in maintaining the network. So that's what we're trying to do.
well, I mean, I strongly believe, and I think it's more than just belief. I think it's almost inevitability that where MaidSafe particularly and the Safe network and the whole of this, what we're talking about, is going to really, I think, catch fire. Isn't in our little comfortable part of the first world. It's going to be the countries that I've been fortunate to live in, Argentina and Venezuela, and places that understand more than any of us sitting around this table of what real being, having your privacy and having a one state dictatorial system looking after you, what damage you can do. And it's going to be in places like that I think is going to be the most interesting part of the whole. To me, watching the SafeNet develop is going to be not for what it's going to do to us over here, because I think we're in a kind of almost a sheltered bubble. Watching what it's going to do and just imagine the power shifting. Where suddenly 5/6 of the world have all the the resources, and they have the payment and they have the knowledge. I mean, it will fundamentally, to me, I think, will shape the world. I mean, that's why it was great to see the other day. You've got to even start one. I saw you start the pod, or you started the kind of little grouping in Cordoba in Argentina.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was a guy just wrote to us and was keen to start a meetup. So yeah, that kind of stuff's really good. But no, I think of a lot of what you're saying is correct. And it's just going to be interesting to see how it's developed. I think as well, we don't really get the most out of the world population just now because so many of them, so many people are living in poverty and don't have access to the internet. So, there is very, very, there's going to be extremely smart people amongst, in these developing countries that don't have access to learn and improve and don't have access to the internet and knowledge. So once we start to enable these people to contribute to the world as well. I mean, we're only using about 40% of our resources in that regard just now. So I think if we can give in developing world access, I think we'll see some pretty smart people come out of there and some pretty interesting ideas.
Well, that ties in with what you were saying earlier on about the health system. I mean, I've been lucky enough to live in parts of the world that have got natural jungles and stuff beside them, and the amount of plants there that are just there that the information isn't, because it's blocked. This is what I'm trying to say about centralization. It blocks things. It blocks progress. It blocks what should really be going on, because there's so much information out there that, like I said, once you can connect all these people and there's no having to sign on to Google or to whatever, you're just in and out. I mean, just take it a step back from that, Nick. I mean, sort of explain to viewers out there, or to people here in this conversation. I mean, what will be the actual physical process I will go through to take myself onto the network? And what will I see when I do? So when I go, how will I, will I just open my computer and just take me through the whole process of what I have to go through physically and what I will see when I go onto the network?
Well, hopefully physically it will be painless is the idea. So trying to make it, I think, because I think a lot of people have commented that MaidSafe is just like this technology or that technology combined. And I think one of the smart things about MaidSafe is that it's trying to make technology that's kind of available today. You can make yourself anonymous to an extent on the network. You can use Tor and combinations of BitTorrent and other things to give some of the features that you get with MaidSafe. But I think making it very usable is hopefully the thing that we bring. And so what hopefully the user will go through on day one is they will go to a website and they will download the Safe Network software. That will put two things on the machine. It'll put on a client and a vault. A client is their way to interface with the network and send instructions to the network. And the vault is a thing that it's hard to explain, but it has multiple roles. So a vault will not only be a location for storage of information on the network, but also make lots of decisions on behalf of the network about who should store data, how much it should store, etc. So those things will happen on using the installers, and then people will do something that probably doesn't appear to be that different. But what they'll do after that is once they've downloaded the software, they will create their own credentials. So it will appear like probably any other process today, but the different thing here will be they are self-authenticating themselves onto this network. So they are making a deal directly between themselves and the network. There is no authentication server, there's no company sitting in the middle who then hoover up all your details and start selling them. So they will then create their own credentials and then log into the network, and that will be the process. And we still need to decide on the installation process and the UI screens about how you decide how much resource you're providing to the network. That still is a bit fluid just now, but a high-level process, it should just really be a simple software download, creating your credentials, and then away you go.
So when you create the credentials, is that a way for other people to find other people on the Safe Network?
No, it's not. So everything's the IDs of the networks of the nodes in the network are anonymous and known only to the network. So there's no way to track users. IP addresses are scrubbed on first hop as data traverses the network. So there's a kind of Tor element built in as well. So yeah, there's no way that we can detect, and we've spent a lot of time looking at different attacks for the network. And I think probably the public internet is probably the most unruly place for data. So we have to be pretty careful. But yeah, we believe that every node will be anonymous, and there's no way to track users in the network.
I heard, I think it was David Irvine speaking of something that will help propel it would be some type of search engine, right? So that you could find, how is that going to go about? If I'm looking for Sealing Demons music on the Safe Network, do I just use Google, or how does that work?
Yeah, so you would need to build a safe browser, as it's been called. So a good way to think of the Safe and the internet is that they're two totally separate networks. So all the data that currently resides in the existing internet will need to be brought across to the Safe network by content providers. So it's not like there's a bridge at the moment built between the internet and Safe. So you will need a Safe specific browser to then search the Safe network.
Okay, and the other thing that I'm still trying to work out in my head, now if I'm a developer and I create an application, then anytime anybody downloads and uses that application, they get paid in SafeCoin? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so what they do is every node in the network has a SafeCoin wallet ID. which will be kind of integrated as part of the UI, and the developer will code in, if they want to, their SafeCoin wallet ID into their application. And as their application is used,
Uh-oh.
Oh, tantalizing.
but there's other things. I mean, there's one the guy Francis Brunel, who's at our Montreal pod, is very passionate about this, and um, we've talked about different ways of, there's lots of different beliefs about when companies should stop being paid for creating an app. So I think something like, for example, that Francis was keen to avoid is that you get someone who creates an app on day one and then spends no time maintaining it or improving it, and they're continually paid. So we're also working on a mechanism whereby the application developer doesn't need to put their wallet address in, and also looking at a kind of watermarking scheme, as well as a way of making sure that if people are earning safe coins for apps, it should be something they're continually improving.
And along that line, I heard there's going to be maybe a type of mechanism that's built in. So if I created a original song and I upload it, and then somebody else uploads my song, it looks towards the original uploader. Now, however, if it's reversed and somebody uploads my original song and then I upload it, how does that get rectified?
Yeah, and this is the tricky thing. I mean, I think it'll be it's kind of up to common sense. When you go onto YouTube, you know when an official channel is and what is not an official channel. And I think it'll be a similar type of thing for the Safe Network, because there's no management or holding of names, because that's kind of goes against the whole ethos of the network. People will be able, they could go and create and say, I'm Bob Dylan or something like that, and start posting his songs and getting paid. But I think initially people will need to use the same common sense that they do today, where they know whether that's the actual artist or not. And of course there'll be instances where that doesn't work perfectly, but I think that's the intention. But yes, it's open to abuse for sure.
Yeah, because I heard Paige Peterson was speaking about that issue, and so it seemed to me like it's something that's still, it needs clarification, I think, for some of the artists. Anyway, I have other questions about SafeCoin, but did you have something else you wanted to say right now, Tim?
No, I was going to say, this is my comment on that was basically, like you said, it was common sense. And I think some of the trouble is with, once you start putting rules into place, rules are basically there for people who haven't got common sense. I mean, if you've got general common sense, you don't need a rule. It's that duh mode. It's that duh. I don't need to be told not to, brush the, common sense, etc. These are, and I think the other point as well is, it's one of the things that particularly I love about what the SafeNet's going to offer, and it is kind of a fundamental shift in what we all think it's going to almost getting our heads into, is choices. We talked about it, with previous guests and stuff. It's life is choices, and it's like I said, if someone wants to make the choice, even if they know blatantly it's not Bob Dylan, like you said, Nick. Even if they know it's not Bob Dylan, but I like that. Well, isn't that person's choice? I mean, that's what you're offering, and then the whole point of what you're offering in Safe Network is to say to people, that's your choice, and we're not going to control your choices.
Right. But from what I understand, as far as data goes, if I'm not mistaken, Safe Network will look at data that's uploaded, and rather than having 10,000 people upload the same thing, they'll look at it and say, oh, that's already been uploaded. And so that makes it a more efficient system. And so that was my question is, how would it know if, But aside from that, going to the SafeCoin idea, what I was wondering is, at what point did you all decide that it was a great idea to put in the cryptocurrency?
It was actually part of the original design. So back in 2006, when David came up with the original system design, there was a thing called perpetual coin as part of the network. And there's a funny thing in the UK where you can't try and protect IP of currencies. So, and I think kind of the idea was slightly lost. And then I think obviously Bitcoin came along in 2009, and the rest is history, as they say. And then I think that Um, there's a few examples of really good technologies that have not reached their potential because they lacked incentivization mechanisms. So you could look at Tor, for example, and people running relays. And I was looking at this the other day, and I think it's like 6,500 relays being run, but 2 million users. So there's a real kind of crisis of the commons there. That network is probably not running at optimum, and they're actually talking, I think, Torcoin as a way to try and incentivize people to run relays. I think Skype as well. They tried to use a supernode model, which never worked terribly well. So I think we became aware that the network by itself is great, and the network is not dependent on the coin to run, but having a coin is fairly essential to keep incentivization mechanisms in place. So it was kind of, to answer your question, it was kind of slotted back in the start of this year. And I think it's been a very good move, and time will tell how well it works.
Okay. And how easy is it going to be seamless being able to get if people purchase SafeCoin from the MasterCoin, I guess the initial offering, I guess when it comes to changing that MaidSafe coin to SafeCoin, is that going to be a really straightforward process, or is there going to be a little tech-savvy aptitude needed?
It shouldn't be. The intention right now is, and it's not set in stone, but the intention is that those MaidSafe coins will be sent to a burn address, and they will sign that with their private key to prove identity, and then we will then send, and as they're doing that, they will also create their credentials on the Safe network, and they'll create a safe wallet ID, and they will send that in with that burn transaction, so that when we swap on a one-to-one basis MaidSafe coins and Safe coins, we will then send the Safe coins for that person to their SafeCoin wallet, and will be cryptographically verifying they are who they say they are, because they'll have signed it with their private key.
And as far as the hard cap of what is it, 4.2 billion Safe coins, is that right?
Yeah, 4.3 billion.
4.3, and then if it becomes highly used and needed, then you're able to divide it yet again, but you're not able to create more. Is that right?
It's kind of correct. So the coin is divisible by, I think it's divisible by 4.3 billion again. So you could have, it's quite exciting, because that's a really cool thing you could have with micropayments. So if you have a coin there's 4.3 billion of them, and they can be divided by that same number again, you've got some pretty small units there, and so that'd be a great way of I don't know, could revolutionize the film industry if you start paying for films based on how many frames you've watched, and if you get partway through the movie and the movie's crap and you're falling asleep, you don't watch the rest and you don't pay for the rest. So that's a nice aside for SafeCoin. It's quite exciting, I think. But so and we don't know how quickly the coins will be farmed, because they're farmed based on how much the network is used. So that's a very difficult thing to know. So what will happen is that we will recycle. So we'll run through to 4.3 billion, but obviously that would be a problem for the network, because after you reach that hard limit, what's the incentive for people putting new data on the network? So we're thinking of recycling, I don't know, a couple of % of the coins, just to keep new data covered, and new data coming across covered by Safe coins, and incentivizing that approach.
Awesome.
Well, I would like to do it was a bit of a provoking question to sort of like someone who's in Scotland, because it's the first time I like someone in Scotland. I mean, as you know, sort of it's kind of strange, and I talked to a lot of people in this podcast who are, especially from America, who have far more, as you would know, Nick, more of a understanding of Bitcoin, decentralization, altcoins. I mean, if I was to walk into True or into Guru up here and say Bitcoin, they wouldn't have a clue. I mean, I'm being honest. No, I want to kind of, as much as we're talking to people on the technical end, my question to you, Nick, was, do you think that it's an advantage that Bitcoin isn't known over here, or is it a disadvantage? Or what I'm trying to say is, to me, I think it's an advantage, because I think you've got almost virgin territory to walk into that hasn't been polluted by, I don't mean that in a negative sense, but it hasn't been polluted by Bitcoin. Because I know that most people, if they are hearing about Bitcoin, they're hearing the negatives now. They're hearing about how it's been started to be regulated and stuff like that. So I just asked you to sort of, just to like I say, someone from speaking to someone else is in Scotland. What do you sort of think
Yeah.
the roadmap is for this? Where we are in this part of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bitcoin thing is it gets a bad press. I think largely through a lot of propaganda. I think as well. So I think it gets probably a bad rap for sure. And I think I would say it's not hugely well known in Scotland. I agree with that, but I think it's known well enough in certain circles. And I think Bitcoin's been amazing for the Safe network because it really helped people understand the concept of decentralization and how it could work. So if you imagine trying to launch this network 5 years ago before Bitcoin, it would be a really, really hard job because people have now been educated for a number of years about decentralization and how powerful it can be. And for example, how the Bitcoin network is, I can't remember, so many hundred times more powerful than the top 500 supercomputers combined or something like that. So it really has educated people about decentralization and the power of it. So I think Bitcoin has been really useful in that regard. Um, and I'm not sure about Safecoin is, I think some people want it to be this Bitcoin replace, I don't know, like or something you could go and buy a loaf of bread with, and that would be okay if that happened. But first and foremost, it's a network token, and it's a currency of the network. So I think as long as it performs that function well, that would be really good. And if it becomes a currency that's more widely used, then great. But it's certainly not um, the underlying aim of having that currency.
I
No,
have another. Go ahead.
go on, Rich.
Oh, yeah. Concerning the wide usage of the SafeCoin, is this as time goes on, and I know that you all work well with other blockchains. From what I understand, Master Exchange is going to upload their blockchain to the MaidSafe network. Am I wrong? I read a paper that said that. Is that true?
Yeah, I've seen it. We've not had any. I mean, we kind of know the Mastercoin guys obviously from the crowd sale, and we stay in touch with them. We've not had any detailed conversations. I did see it also in a roadmap document for them. It was like 2015. They were going to do something integrate onto the Safe network. So I have seen that, but I don't really have much more exciting information to tell you other than probably what you've read yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I thought that was kind of fascinating, the idea, and I think I even heard Ethereum was looking at uploading their blockchain to the Safe network as well, and it just kind of is a no-brainer. It just makes sense that that's a good place for the blockchain to exist.
Yeah, I hadn't heard the Ethereum one actually. I hadn't heard that they were trying to do that, but it would make sense that they would. Yeah,
You never know what's true in this space when you hear it three times from removed.
that's right. Yeah, it's hard to know what's actually going on, isn't it?
Yep. Tim, you're frozen. Oh, he's. I don't know what happened there. I guess it froze out. So, how was it growing up in Scotland? You have lived there most of your life?
Yeah, so obviously I'm 21 just now, so for the first 21 years, yeah, I've been here. So yeah, I've always lived in Scotland and always on the West Coast. So it's a nice part of the world, and it's I've travelled a lot, and there's nowhere else I'd rather live than Scotland. So yeah, very passionate about it, and yeah, it's a great place to be. And obviously, if I hadn't been here, then I wouldn't be part of MaidSafe, so that's another plus.
It seems like you're part of another Scottish revolution in technology. It seems like a lot of great technologies come out of Scotland.
We've got a good record of innovation and engineering, particularly. So things like actually in my hometown was John Logie Baird, who was the inventor of the television. And we've got kind of penicillin and the phone and unfortunate things like insurance. Unfortunately, was one of ours. So sorry to the world for that one. But yeah, we've come up with quite a lot of things for such a small country um, in kind of the armpit of Europe, if you like. So yeah, we punch above our weight, I think.
Awesome, awesome. You're back.
Sorry, man. I got. You just talk about how great Scotland technology was, and I got cut completely. I was going to sort of going to talk to you, Nick, about. I read a quote and I thought it was something that I would love to hear your thoughts on. Um, as most people know, it's the 25th year of the internet being sort of like launched onto our sort of planet sort of thing. And I read a quote recently from Tim Berners-Lee. I'd just like to read it, and I'd like to
Mhm.
hear your thoughts on it, Nick, and see how you sort of whether you chime with it or just and then maybe explain it more or just discuss it more. So that he said this recently. He's basically talking about the internet, saying what started out as a simple HTML documents linked together became dynamic. The value and excitement of the web is what we can build on it, and the mind-blowing creativity it has enabled over the last 25 years. But to continue to what we must do, we must keep on fighting to keep it a platform without central control.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of people calling for that now, and I mean obviously that was the initial intention with the internet was in order to provide the US security, the ability to continue to communicate after nuclear war or something like that. So it's supposed to be decentralized at the start, and I think certain things happened in the internet's history that made it centralized, and we've just built on that, and then industries have sprung up around it, and companies with vested interests in keeping it centralized, and we're now running a not hugely efficient way of structuring the internet as a result because things have just been built on top of it. So I would agree. I mean Tim Berners-Lee has been calling for decentralization and for some time, and um, hopefully we're about to see that start happening.
Well, we can all hope because I don't think no, I don't actually. I don't say the word hope, Nick. I think this is we're at the. I say it often and often in this podcast. We're living in the greatest of days, and we're lucky enough that maybe if we do have grandchildren, or if we're around in 20 years' time, and we haven't been taken over, and we're not incinerated into machines, that we're going to be that our kids are going to say to us, "Wow, you were around when you saw the internet being born, and you were around in 2014 before MaidSafe was switched on, before the Safe Network was switched on, before it all got decentralized. You were around and you remember those days." That's why I don't think it's a hope, Nick. I think this is evident everywhere you see. And I mean, one of the things you'll know more than anyone else now is that this, to sort of say the genie's out of the hat, the bottle, as they say. There's no one can switch off the Safe Network now.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I hope was probably not the best choice of word. I think you're right, and I think we would view it as inevitable. This path that we're on with decentralization, and um, you see it quite a lot in all walks of life now. It's not Bitcoin decentralizing trade and banking. We're starting to see a lot of people decentralize law with Ethereum and Monetize and other companies. So I agree. I think it feels like evolution to me, and I think it's unstoppable. And whether it's MaidSafe that do it, the Safe Network, or whether it's someone else, I think someone will do it. So I agree. Hope is probably not the strongest word to use, and I think it's inevitable.
And that's why I think one of the biggest with what's going on at the moment with the complexity that's coming around us. I think one of the things we as a human species have got to is we've got to get our heads around is we've got to keep in touch. We've got to find a way of not letting this take away from us, and that's what I love about the safe net it's going to come on is that almost we like you said, this technology is going to evolve around us, and we've got to be in control of it, and not let it be in control of us, which is what we're living in at the moment, where this technology that was built to help us all communicate is slowly going against what it was originally set up for, and it's gone from being something where we're all going to freely communicate to they're all being surveilled, where we're all going to have more privacy, where we're getting less privacy, and I think that's one of the great strengths of what you're about to switch on. And I was on that very subject, Nick. I mean, what's the roadmap between now and you going live? I mean, what's the roadmap?
So we're actually going to publish that. We've been saying this for some time, and it's taken us a bit longer to get all the I's dotted and T's crossed. But um, So we'll be publishing that this week and pushing it out through social media and stuff. But I think the high level plan is that at the moment we are in test network 2, we're making the network more resistant to what we call network churn, which is users switching their machines off and on. And then we'll start to enable sharing as well during this testnet, so the ability to share information, and also advancing our APIs for third-party developers. And then we'll move into testnet 3, and at that point, the focus of that testnet is really to start to implement SafeCoin, which will be the focus for that testnet. And then after that, we move into beta launch. So at quite a high level, that's the kind of 4 or 5 steps we'll be running through to get to beta launch. But as I say, we'll put a more detailed roadmap out this week.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I think is crucial, and I don't know if you'd agree with me, to think it's going to make the strength of this network initially, and that's why we do, as it says on the strapline, building on, MaidSafe technology. I'm of personally the strong belief that if we can make the stronger we can make the network by getting people involved, that's going to give it the initial hub, the crux of, and hopefully then we can take this into the future. Now, I only bring this up because I would love to put a call out here for tonight. This is I'm maybe using this very reason that you're on here tonight, Nick, for this very reason. But I'm looking for developers. Because I've got, and I've said this before, I'm not short of people who are wanting to join the Safe network. I'm not short of bands and musicians and the people out there, the rock and roll people who are wanting to jump on board this. I'm looking for people out there who are out there to develop this, and I've said before, we're at this moment where it's like being 100 years ago. We're at the point where this technology is so exciting, and I don't know. I would just put the call out there to because I think not only we're not going to be the only ones. I think there's going to be plenty of other people out there that are going to soon swamp this network and soon swamp the whole thing. So, I mean, what would your advice be to me, from someone that we're trying to build on the network and we're getting, we've got the sort of the support there. What advice would you give to someone like me about where I can take my, I'll ask my advice of you. What advice would you sort of say? Where's the best places to do a call for developers and stuff? What advice would you give to someone like me?
I think for development courses, probably need to come from the languages themselves. So we're making it possible to program in lots of different languages, for the network. So I think there is some discussion about getting training courses and things like that up and running. What we're also going to be doing, Tim, as we roll through these test networks, we're also going to be producing these example applications, which will serve as tutorials for developers in their network, so that they will see the building of a messaging app or a voice over IP app, and they'll be able to look at it and analyze the code and the way it was done, and then apply that to their own idea. So I think as we roll through these test nets, we'll start to have these tutorials in place, and they will be great grounding places for new developers. But I think there's a real need, once the network is launched and in the long term, to start providing training or some kind of course, I think, to make sure that people are more comfortable. And I think we'll get to that as the network matures. But I think we'll see at the start of the network quite a lot of things needing done, and that's going to be one of them. But I don't think we'll have that for day one.
Well, this is one of the things that I would, I kind of mentioned to both you and Dave before. It's one of my ideas that I think could work really well with what I think I've heard mentioned, Dave mentions before, is that the idea of seeding the world with USB sticks. I mean, I think that's one of the things that one of the sort of concepts I've got in my own head about that, is that I'd love to put a CD out. Like I was mentioning before that I lived in Argentina when they tried to get everybody to go to AOL, and we were all given CDs at the time. And I just thought, if we could do the same now with some of the bands that we've got on, and we could give this music, this CD to everybody, it would be something that we could give out with the ability to a place for them to secure their access to the Safe network. Is that something that could be done? I mean, is that a doable?
I think there's a hope. I know that David's talked a lot about putting the network onto memory sticks and things like that. So I think so. I think that is going to be a possibility, and it's a big driving force for us, as I was saying at the start, to enable the developing world to start to use it, and giving them, allowing them to run the network on very, very simple devices. So, uh, yeah, I think it's possible, and I know that David's been talking about it. Yeah, so yeah, I think it is, Tim. I think we could
Uh,
put things in memory sticks.
Rich, is there anything you want to sort of, you want to ask, Rich?
Finally, you were talking about the memory sticks. I just purchased one of those lanterns from the OuterNet Indiegogo campaign, and of course I'm not going to get it until July of 2015 if all goes well. But the idea of the perhaps MaidSafe network, somebody being able to download it anywhere in the world using one of those lanterns is kind of a nice idea too. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of ways for people to get MaidSafe.
Yeah, I mean, OuterNet's a very cool project, and I think that starts to get quite. And this is kind of where you start to fantasize a bit about, combining Outernet and MaidSafe and removing ISPs altogether from the equation. I think that would be very powerful. So Outernet is a really, really interesting project, and it'll be nice to see how that one develops, and hopefully you get your lantern in 2015.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, it's 1 hour. Thank you. I really enjoyed this. Yeah, I learned a lot from you.
You're welcome. Though. Thanks for having me. It was nice talking to you as well.
Rich, so Nick, so where can people go, just to sort of wrap it off, where can people go to find out more about MaidSafe, Safe Network, just to generally, where can we go? What?
Yeah, I think just www.maidsafe.net is kind of the hub, and then from there Um, you can go to System Docs, you can go to GitHub if you're more technical, you can go to our forum, which is maidsafe.org, and join up there, which is a community-run forum. So, and our Twitter feed at MaidSafe is good as well. So, lots of places to go, and hopefully lots of information coming through as well.
Well, my final word would be when we finally do our launch and we have our launch gig with some of the coolest bands in this in the UK. All the people at the crew down at MaidSafe are all definitely a VIP invite because, and I say this sincerely, and I've joked about with you before when I've seen you in person and stuff. Is that you know you are generally the shoulders that we're walking upon. You're what you're doing is a very great thing, and I know you're very humble, and that is the way of a lot of creative people. We are very humble by nature, not because we're trying to be, but it's just because we know the power of what we're working with. But from the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank you very much and all your team down there because I think some of us now who are at the edge of things can sort of see what's going to happen. I don't think any of us are going to know what's going to happen, but the potential of what's about to happen is immense, and I think I can only say thank you from my end, and thank you for the people I know that speak to me on a daily basis for what you're doing, because it's one of the most revolutionary and evolutionary things that's ever about to be launched. And I'd like to thank all the effort you want to put in, and again for the time that you put in tonight, because I know how busy you are. And I'll give you the final word, Nick.
Yeah, no, well, thanks for having us on, and it's absolutely our pleasure. I mean, if to allow us to do this is a great thing, and we're just really excited, and it's going to be a really, really interesting ride, whatever happens. So, no, it's absolutely our pleasure, and I think everyone at MaidSafe is working very hard, and we're going to stick true to our values and make sure we're all about getting people control of their own data back again. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting ride, and thanks for having me on.
Well, that seems very appropriate, man, because as we often mention, it's just a ride. It's a very Bill Hicks line. I think that's a very good way to end the show.
Yeah. But the
Enjoy
cleanest thing of Bill Hicks we could actually say is the only line you could actually quote in a public forum
Well,
without all the swearing being laced through it.
it's a good one to finish on, though. It's just a ride.
Yeah.
Well,
Great.
from Scotland, and it's a very good evening from me, Tim. Good evening, Rich, and good evening, Nick.
Thank you. Cheers, Tim. See you later.
Life is people, people.